So here we are on slide 8, factors which can influence trauma reactivity. These include personality type, temperament, environment, and level of exposure. And you can stop and have a discussion here about, giving some examples of each factor of influence as well, some specific examples. Here we are on slide 9. What is the locus of control? This has to do with a person's sense of being in the world and sense of agency and sense of control. So basically, an internal locus of control would be a sense of agency, having a sense that your actions and behaviors dictate and control the outcomes. You can control how you are treated by others with your behavior. And so that is kind of the one type. And then the other type, which typically does happen more with trauma than not, particularly with early childhood trauma or ongoing trauma, is the person will get an external locus of control, which is having no sense of agency, no sense of control, no sense of things happening to your reason. It's basically like things are happening at you. Having no control over how others treat you, having it just be very random and consistently chaotic or unpredictable. So those are just two different coping styles that happen internally, and depending on how a person thinks of the world, that can affect how they think of themselves in the world as well, and that can affect behavior. All right. And here we're going to just take a small break to do an activity, a grounding activity. So when they say grounding, what they're talking about is the electrical activity is affected by trauma exposure. And if the electrical activity is affected by trauma or extreme stress exposure, that has a huge effect on how the brain and the body are able to recover as well. There's a process of recovery that happens with the brain and the body. And one of the things that trauma specialists have found very helpful is grounding or anchoring techniques. So I'll just give you a couple of quick examples of a grounding or anchoring technique. We'll start with anchoring. So anchoring, I would say you can just start out, have the person sit in the chair or be wherever they are, but uncrossing legs, uncrossing arms, finding a peaceful place to kind of, with intention, focus inward and kind of just be in the body for a moment. And so you could say something like this: there's a storm out on the ocean and you're on a boat, and your boat has an anchor, and you can throw the anchor down, and the anchor is going to hold the boat safe during the storm. And the storm will pass. The storm always passes. There's only so much rain in the sky. That was Maya Angelou that said that. And so you just imagine that anchor holding you safe, and the storm is rocking and rustling about and making lots of noise, and it's scary, but it's going to pass, and that anchor is going to hold the boat safe during the storm. Now, when the storm passes, which it always does, then the person can go ahead and take the anchor up. The waters are peaceful and still, and they can make their way safely towards shore, just a little bit at a time, safe and serene on a nice, still, sunny day. And here we are at slide 10, relationship patterns and conditions. Some survivors, although certainly not all, come from families where there are few models of healthy relationships. They may not have access to support or well-informed adults. Support group facilitators may be the first adults that these people have encountered who exhibit healthy boundaries, demonstrate respect for young people, and offer frank information about topics essential for teen development. Childhood sexual abuse does not occur in a vacuum, and many teen survivors have experienced multiple traumatic events. So it's hard to have a conversation about sexual assault without talking about consent. There are tons and tons of wonderful videos available for free on YouTube about consent, And these are just some things that I have learned about consent since I've started doing this type of work. Consent is an enthusiastic yes or no, according to the Sexual Assault Recovery Center. Consent must be freely given. So if you are too drunk or too high or sleeping, you cannot give consent freely, okay? The age of consent must be appropriate. So children cannot give consent to sexual activities because they are not of age yet by law. And so that just needs to be considered. No power differentials, so teachers with their students, counselors with their clients, stuff like that, an adult with a child, a coach or a teacher. All of those are inappropriately the power differential contributes to whether or not a person can freely give their consent. So that's really important. This is very important. Consent may be given, may be rescinded at any time. So you can change your mind. Just because you said yes once doesn't mean that it's always a yes. It could be no the next time, right? All right, so the difference between consent and informed consent is informed consent comes with all of the information right up front on the plate, truthfully and honestly. Like, hey, I'd like to get with you. And the other person could say, yeah, I'm into that, or no, I'm not really into that. So it's just an example of consent being an ongoing process, not just one conversation, okay? Implied consent, excuse me, is when no consent or refutable consent is made clear, yet if the person goes along with it, they have implied consent. This is not an appropriate or fair assumption and does require a certain amount of clarity. And finally, a containment exercise. A containment exercise might look something like this. You imagine yourself on a train. The train is on its tracks. You're safe on the train. The train knows where it's going. First, you always want to have people settle, breathe, get into their bones, safe in their skin, strong in their bones, okay? Get them to settle, still, and have intention to put into this energy, okay? We're going back to it. All right, you're on a train. The train is on its tracks. You're safe on the train. No matter what anxiety or negative thoughts you have, you let them go outside. You watch them go by. You don't attach to them. You don't have any feeling whatsoever. You just notice, oh, there's some anxiety. Be very curious. Oh, there's some guilt. Oh, there's a bit of shame. Let it go by because you're safe on the train and the train knows where it's going. It's on its tracks. You're safe. You're contained. You're in this train and the train knows where to take you, okay? So you just stay on the train and you let these things go by. You let them just float by the train and you're safe on your tracks. You're on your way. Eventually you'll come through out onto the other side of the tunnel. You'll go through a tunnel and you'll come out and there'll be light on the other side. And when you come to the other side where there's light, you'll come to your stop. And at your stop, all of your people that love you and care about you and cherish you and want to rise you up are there waiting for you. Arms open, saying, we cook some food. We have a bed for you. Come home. Welcome home. We love you. Okay? You get off the train at your tracks. You're safe, you're rested, and you're well. Okay? And breathe into that. Let that settle into your bones. Let that sense of safety settle around you in your skin. You can come back to this place anytime you need. It's always here for you. Okay? Good. And please feel free to stop and have discussions on any one of these slides. Get some input from the group. If input from the group can come back to me as feedback, I would love that. I'd be more than happy to make changes and incorporate that as I go. A group is meant to be somewhat structured, but also it's got a fluidity to it over time, and it does have to grow and breathe and change as feedback is received. And it is very important for young people to be able to give feedback and have a sense of agency over what goes and what stays in this group and what was beneficial and what maybe was too much information. So here we are at slide 12. Toxic or restorative responses do matter. Is the person victimized just a slut? Okay, that's dehumanizing, objectifying, rationalizing, minimizing. This is a way to objectify the person and to not take the person seriously or give value to what the person is saying. Okay, so that's not an appropriate way to respond. Um, Instead, consider an open dialogue. What happened? How can I support you? What can I do to help you? So you document. It's very important to document appropriately, um, to show the person that they are going to be represented in a capacity that is going to benefit them and help support them in their healing. Having an empowering conversation about how the person is going to get through, and they're going to be just all right, and they're going to have a new baseline, but it is what it is, and we're here to support, we're here to empower, we're here to rise you up. And then, of course, resourcing would be giving the person access to resources, making sure that they're safe, making sure that they have a place to go back to after this. If they're in the hospital, having an exam, making sure that they have a clean clothes to leave and to go home in safely. Okay, so there you go. Okay, so depending on the situation, there is such a thing as victim blaming or victim shaming, and then there's also on the flip side of that, victim empowerment and victim support. So I'm just going to take you through a short list of examples. So I'm going to start on one side and then go to the other side, back and forth. And hopefully at the end of the day, these will balance out and people will really have a new understanding on how to talk to survivors in a way that is empowering and supportive rather than blaming or shaming. Okay. What were you wearing? Okay. That really does imply that you did something wrong by the clothes you were wearing, and you know that that's not true. Okay, so on the flip side of that, when someone comes to report, you might say, I believe you. Okay, that's it. It's simple. What, you knew each other? Were you dating? Were you married? Okay, this assumes the blame onto the victim. And that's not acceptable. That's not an acceptable, supportive way to do it. A better way to do it might say something like this: I'm so glad this is over and that you're safe now. How different does that feel to hear? Okay. We'll give two more examples. One would be, what was your level of impairment? Or were you messed up? Were you drunk? Were you high? Implying that the victim, had some part of this. Instead, you might say something like, you know what? You're right here. I'm with you. And it's over now. Okay? Why didn't you scream? Why didn't you run? Why didn't you leave? Okay? What if instead the person who was trying to be supportive and empowering said, we're going to develop a plan together to get you help and to get you recovered? How different do those things feel? Please make a choice when you're working with this population to be on the side of victim support and victim encouragement. So it's so important that we at least touch on this at some point during the presentation, how teenagers kind of automatically have a power differential with adults, right? And so when a teenager is trying to tell what happened to them, a sexual assault or an incident that was inappropriate, and trying to get it reported and get it on record to help make sure it doesn't happen to other people, sometimes they are discounted right off the bat just by how they are, age. Like if you're a teenager and you're trying to report an adult or even another teenager, if you happen to be in a relationship with that person, just because you're married does not mean that you can't be raped or sexually assaulted in some way. If you've dated someone or if you are on a date with someone, that is sometimes implied that you are going to allow anything to happen to you or whatever. I don't really understand that, but just because you're on a date with someone does not give them the right to assault you or violate you in any way ever or make you feel unsafe, okay? People who are elderly, And people who are disabled sometimes are not believed. Oftentimes they're dependent on caregivers, and people just simply don't want to believe that people can violate people like that. So there's a lot of stigma involved. There's a lot of labeling, stereotyping, saying us against them. Low social status, somebody who's poor might not get believed as much as someone from a wealthier family. It's sad to say, but it's true. And then, of course, racial, ethnic, gender discrimination does happen and is a real thing. So we just need to be aware of that and always on the lookout. And then I just want to say this, just believe in yourself, believe in each other. Maybe come up with a list of examples of how you might talk and how you might make people feel like they're in a position where you believe them and you want them to get better and you want them to thrive. So might stop here and just give some examples about how to do that, how to increase how we talk about it and how we are received when we are trying to tell our truth. Okay, thanks. So this is a grounding technique. We talked about anchoring and grounding. A grounding technique could look something like this or could sound something like this. So first of all, you always want to get yourself centered. Focus on your breath with intention, big belly breaths all the way down the chest and into the belly and all the way out again to release all of that air that is no longer useful, beneficial, and to invite in clean, fresh air that can help you breathe easy. Okay, so a grounding technique might be like this. There's a couple different ones that I like to use, and I'll just briefly take you through. One would be a box. This is a containment exercise. Containment would be something like, okay, once you're settled, you do this typically at the end of a session, but you can do it anytime during the session. It's just a way to put things back away. You would imagine a box. The box is big enough to hold everything and anything from today's journey or any other part of your life that used to serve you that no longer serves you. So I just want you to focus for a moment on the box, what that box would look like, what it would feel like, what it might be like to be able to put things away in that box. And then I want you to gather up, sweep up everything off the floor. Gather it up and put it in the bin, put it in the box. Keep it in the box, and whenever you're ready, we're going to put a lock on the box. The lock can be anything of your choosing, can be any texture. It can feel hard or be solid or be invisible. It can be any way that you want it to be. And when you're ready, I just want you to take that lock and lock the box up tight. We're going to put the box away, not forever, but just for today. And whenever you're together with a trusted guide or spirit, you will come back and do this work. Again, you will never have to do this work alone. You always have the capacity to put it in the box for a little while until we can get back to it. Okay? Whenever you're ready, I just want you to put the lid on the box, close the lock up tight with a lock of your choosing, and just let it be. Put it away. Okay? Good. Thank you so much for being with us during the slide presentation. I know it's hard information to talk about and hard to get down with, but it is what it is, and everybody needs to start having some real serious conversations about this in order to help prevent it for future generations and in order for our current generations to heal and to settle into the fact that the world is not always a safe place, okay? But it can be, and it can be restored to safety. And so that really is the duty of all of us to come back and to say, hey, we need to do better. We need to work on this. We need to talk about this. It's important. And let the blame be with the perpetrators, not with the survivors. It's just critical. So Ruth Hetman has been very, very generous in helping me put this presentation together. I just want to give her a shout out and credit where credit's due. I've worked very hard to create this presentation for Sexual Assault Awareness Month last month, and I will be following up with the attendees and making sure that everyone gets their hands on this presentation. It's free to use. I would really, really appreciate any feedback coming in. I'll be happy to make adjustments and accommodations as such. And thank you again for being here with us during this time and for fighting the good fight.